Today on Spicer Collector Car Profile, we're sitting down with Northwest race car champion Monte Shelton. His 56-year racing career has taken him all over the country, and he's raced about every cool car you can imagine. So stick with us while we sit down with Monte Shelton. I want to thank you, Monte, for joining me today.
My pleasure, thank you.
I'm really excited to talk about the history of racing and being with Monte Shelton, legend, Northwest legendary race car driver.
Legend in my own mind.
One of the things I was reading about was, you mentioned the Healy in 1960 that you campaigned. Take me to the time before you got that car. How did racing, how did you know it was in your DNA?
You know, it started, I think, when I was very young. I used to sneak out and get my dad's Model A and drive that. And then when I was in like 14 maybe, I used to have a 30 Ford two-door sedan. And I'd take it out in a pasture, and this neighbor of mine that had cows in her would let me drive this in her. And so I did hours of slides, car control and stuff like that. And I think I had a feel for it. I just, I could steer with the slide and just had a lot of fun doing it. Well, somewhere along the way, I was still interested in cars. I subscribed to Hot Rod and Road and Track and that stuff, so I knew a lot about cars. And I saw a movie, The Racers, with Kirk Douglas and Bella Darby. But it was a seminal moment for me. I knew I wanted to race. So I bought a 100M Healy at the Portland Auto Auction for $650.
Now, were you hanging out with race car drivers at the time, or?
No. I used to go up to Shelton, Washington, and those places to watch races. Not really hanging out, but just kind of drooling over them. So anyway, I bought this car, race prepped it. I knew enough to race prep it, and I went racing. I think it was March 1960. I was fearless. I was always forever going too deep and spinning out or doing something like that. So I finally got my mojo, I guess, and could go in far enough but not too far. So I just learned some early lessons and learned a lot about the rain. I swear the first 3 years I raced, every other race, it just poured in Shelton.
So you cut your chops in the rain, which has been
real good. I've always had a pretty good knack for driving in the rain. I had a 48 Cadillac hearse that I used as a tow car, and I hooked that car up and I flat-towed it, and I towed it to Candlestick Park, their inaugural race in San Francisco. We raced in that thing, and I must have hit 5 or 6 guys during the race. Bam, bam, bam. It was just so crowded. Pretty soon I got a meatball flag, and I come in, and there's this chief steward there, this great guy. He says, "How you doing, Monty?" I said, "Well, doing pretty good." He says, he said something to the effect, "Is it bothering you sitting here and you want to go racing?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to get back out there." And he says, "Well, I'm going to let you back out there, but if you hit one more guy, I'm going to take you out the race." So it was a memorable race. It's a memorable race. I got chewed out. I wasn't doing a very good job. And there were a couple of crashed cars real bad. There was a Cobra in Auto Week for $3,000. It had been wrecked. And that's the one that I bought. It was Chuck Parsons had driven it at the Road Race of Champions in 1964. I think it was 64 or 5. Anyway, he'd wrecked the car trying to beat Ed Leslie. So I called Chuck, made a deal to buy the car for $3,000, brought it back home, gave it to Ted Mathey, who was a body man and an old Corvette racer from Portland, an all-around good guy. And paid $3,000 for the car. I went to the bank. They gave me $4,000 as a loan. I gave them the car as collateral. They got this race car as collateral. God, I can't believe they did it. Got it all prepped, took it to Newport for the Loyalty Day races, and just smoked everybody there. It was just head and shoulders above any performance I'd ever had before. But anyway, I had the car at Seattle for a USRRC to Dave McDonald, and I got a whole shot on him and was leading the race until about lap 20-something, and the transmission failed. And I couldn't believe it because we'd just done the transmission. So I went over to Jack Hoare, who was the manager of the Shelby Racing thing, and told him what had happened. And he said, "Well, and it had aluminum tail shaft in it because the original ones were cast iron, and I thought, I'm going to save some weight, being real clever. So I put the aluminum one in there, and Jack said that we quit using those aluminum tail shaft housings because they fail. Now you tell me. So anyway, a lot of lessons learned. That could have been a pretty big win.
After you sold the Cobra,
Sold the Cobra. I recuperated for a while, raced.
what was it? Was that the 906? Tell me about that car. I mean, what
Well,
made
the
you-
906 was sold new. They bought it at Riviera Motors from the Porsche distributor, Porsche Audi Northwest. And they distributed the car, and they bought it for Earl Childs. Earl Childs' driver, Mike Fisher, got into some trouble with it out of PIR. And I think Mike was an extremely good driver, but I think he hit a patch of gravel or something and crashed the car a little bit. So Earl didn't want it anymore, so they wanted $5,000 for it, so I bought it. The Porsche weighed 1,100 pounds, and it had 200 horsepower roughly. And the Cobra was 2,000 pounds, and had 400 horsepower. So the power to weight ratio is approximately the same. But the thing about this Porsche was it handled extremely well.
Were those cars superior? Were you and Lou ahead of everybody?
Oh no, the McLarens and stuff were way faster than a 906. But it rained. It rained. I mean, it rained. And I won that race, the Westwood Pacific race. I still got the trophy for it. I don't keep many trophies, but I've got that one. And I think the purse was nearly $7,000. So I got my money back.
And what attracted you to the Lola?
I kind of wanted to do Can-Am. I'd been reading about Can-Am. So we got it home and didn't have an engine. So we tried a couple different engines and none of them worked. Finally, I said, this is what we're going to do. So I went down to Field Chevrolet and bought a 327 High Pro engine. So we had this stock motor, and buddy of mine that still works for me, Jack Dyer, we loaded it on a four-wheel trailer and a bumper hitch on a 67 Dodge something or other, and our wives, and we went to Riverside. Well, the old Riverside start finish is like this, but it goes down, it's a dip like this, then goes up to a hard left-hander turn one. Well, it's not real hard, but standing start. And I was behind, I'd qualified mid-pack, so I was about 20-something. And you could look up, and I had to undo the belts to look up, see where the starter was. And so when he saw him doing the start, I peeled out and went kind of up on the inside. When I got to turn one, 3 cars had crashed, and I went under the bodywork of some kind of racer that was going like this and drove under that. And it's quite a race. I mean, it was really work. I love that old Riverside racetrack. We had an M1. It was yellow. I bought it from Dick Niles. And it had a nice 327 motor in it. We decided we could get a 454 motor in there. And we put a 454 motor in there, and it set up high, and it was a wet sump. It was a monster. I had it going over 200 miles an hour down the back straight at Riverside. And it set up so high, the wind was hitting you here, and it blowing your face all around.
And in '79, tell me how you and Bruce Canepa and Rick Mears came together.
1979, I'd been doing really well in the Trans Am, and I actually led the Trans Am series at one time. And I had a call from Bruce. Bruce called me and wanted to know if I wanted to race. He had a 934, single turbo 934. It was a white car with orange letters. That's what I can remember, and a couple of extra lights on the front of it. And so we went down there, and he'd never done one of those races, and I hadn't either. We started the race. I can't even remember who started it, but the guy that drove with us was Rick Mears. And Rick Mears was just a guy from California. No one really knew him then, but that was the year that he won Indianapolis for Roger, his first year. So he was a real hero after that. But to me, he was just a really good driver and pretty quiet, and we had a good time. We had a little incident in the middle of the night where the crew had put on the wrong wheel, and the bevel on the spline was wrong, and it came off. and on the back side of the course, and Rick had to come back in and get a wheel and tire and take a crew guy out and get it on, and we lost half hour, 45 minutes. We still came in third, but we probably would have been second, and that's my excuse. But anyway, we did third, and that was pretty good. But Daytona is a great race, and so I always pay attention when I'm doing, and I have the ability, I think, situational awareness. You're on the track, but you got guys behind you, guys beside you, and you need to know where everybody's at. So you need to pay attention to the mirror and what you're doing, and don't let the mirror intimidate you, but just know where you're at.
Porsche 962. I think I've got a quote here, the most pure racing car I've ever driven.
It is, it is.
Tell me about that car.
As not only that, it's anybody could drive that car. I mean, literally. I mean, I don't know if you could drive it real fast, but it just is all race car, and it was so comfortable. The seating, the pedals, and everything. The only thing that was not real good on that car was the gear shifter. It's a 5-speed, and it's low, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Well, fourth gear, when you're going to fourth gear, there's a little rod that comes down. It's a bracing, and if you go like this, you bang your knuckles. So to get fourth gear, you had to palm the shift and shift like this. So it took me a while to do that with red knuckles and everything. Anyway, that's the only thing I didn't like about that car. I wanted to notch that thing out. But it's a pure racing car. But it doesn't work until you do 10/10ths. That car doesn't like 9/10ths. It works really good at 10/10ths. So you have to drive it. And I did. And it's real skitterish for the first 4 or 5 laps. You get the tires warmed up. They're radial tires, but they go down and they're flat. And so there's no roll in them, and you got to get the rubber hot before it works.
Tell me about Old Blue. Tell me, I mean, that car is iconic.
Yeah, that car's got a zillion races on it. That's the car that in 1981, I was in the Trans Am with it. It burst a tire. Something happened to the right rear tire going down a straightaway, and I lost control. And that was when there was a guardrail on the left about 2 feet high. And I hit that guardrail and launched the car like this. And one wheel is off here in the air, and one wheel is here, and the gas tank is out in front of the car. It's just like a slow motion one, I swear. I knew it was going to hurt. Everything was real quiet. Well, I hit, and fortunately, the car hit backwards. It just hit and stuck in the dirt, and I was knocked out. It knocked all the wind out of me.
Waiting for the other to blink. But let's move down to turn 1. We've just had a collision down there. This one's a bad one. A car has gone off the track and turned over and over again. We don't know who it is at this point, but pieces are flying everywhere. We understand now it's car number 57. Now that's Portland's Monte Shelton. We mentioned earlier that he was having handling problems with his vehicle. Emergency crews are rushing to the scene. Let's cue up the incident replay and see if we can get a better look at it. We don't actually see the collision, but there goes the Porsche into the bank, and this is a real tragedy. The car, as we mentioned, was untested. Monte has been in 2 serious accidents before in his racing career, and we can only hope he is okay in this one. We have a report now that Monte Shelton walked away from that spectacular crash you witnessed just a few moments ago. He is being taken to a hospital just to make sure that he's all right. But that's a miracle. Shelton's car just blew apart on turn 1. But once again, Monte Shelton has walked to the ambulance on his own power, and that is certainly good news.
Well, anyway, we cut the front end off of it, then cut the back end off and remade it all together, and then painted it blue, and been racing it blue like that ever since. I've been super production champion with it for umpteen years, and just raced it.
So in 2004, you were inducted into the Oregon Sports Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that ceremony and kind of what it meant to you.
Well, it was pretty special to be recognized for racing accomplishments. I mean, I don't know if I've accomplished anything. I've just had a lot of fun along the way, but I actually do have my name on a few trophies and stuff. So I think Rolla Volstead instigated that, and maybe Herschel. So Volstedt's in there, Herschel McGriff, and myself. There's 3 of us in the Oregon Sports Hall of Fame for motor racing. I've tried to have a good time racing, and I think I have. Never take it too serious. I mean, I'm serious, I want to win, and if I'm racing you, I'm going to do everything I can to pass you, but I still have fun doing it. Most of racing is about your car. A lot of the guys that can drive in the upper levels, they're all good. You give them a better car than anybody else and they'll win, and that's what I've always believed. So I believe, could I race with John Surtees at Riverside if I'd have had a good engine in it? Damn straight.
Well, I want to thank you for sitting down with me today and giving me some history and insight into your career. It's fascinating, and it's going to be great to honor
Most
you.
of it's true that I've told you. I haven't made up anything.